Hi, my name is Lily. I've been married for 5 years, and for all this time, I thought everything between Tom and me was perfect. We built our lives together, shared dreams, and planned our future. Tom always seemed like someone I could rely on. But recently, things have started to change. I noticed it in small details that felt off, but I didn't want to admit it. And then, everything became crystal clear. I always believed I could read Tom like an open book. But a few months ago, he started to pull away. He came home later than usual, with excuses about work demanding more of him. Before, he loved to talk about his day in detail, but now his answers were short and distant. He spent more time on his phone, typing messages, and when I asked who he was talking to, he would shrug it off. "Just colleagues," he'd say. At first, I brushed it off, thinking he was just stressed. But one evening, I caught him smiling at his phone, completely absorbed in whatever he was reading, and that sinking feeling in my gut intensified. One evening, we were sitting on the couch together. Tom was glued to his phone, messaging someone. Trying to sound casual, I asked, "What's so funny?" He quickly locked the screen and gave me a strained smile. "Oh, nothing important. Just some work stuff," he replied. But I noticed how uneasy he seemed. That was the first time he acted so secretive, and I couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. That night, I couldn't sleep. My mind kept racing, piecing together all the little things I'd ignored. Tom was fast asleep beside me, his phone resting on the nightstand. My heart pounded as I reached for it, my hands trembling. I knew it was an invasion of privacy, but I couldn't stop myself. When I unlocked the screen, I froze. There it was, her name, Emma. My best friend since college. The person I trusted the most. At first, I thought maybe it was innocent. But as I opened their messages, my world shattered. The messages were explicit, undeniable. They talked about how much they missed each other, how amazing last night was, and even made plans for their next meeting. Every word felt like a dagger. I couldn't believe it. Tom and Emma, the two people I trusted more than anyone else, were betraying me. I knew I couldn't confront them without solid proof. I needed to be strategic to make sure they couldn't talk their way out of it. So, I took screenshots of their entire conversation and sent them to my own phone. Afterward, I carefully placed Tom's phone back on the nightstand and lay in bed, staring at the ceiling. The next morning, I hired a private investigator to gather more evidence. I needed to know just how deep this betrayal went. The truth would hurt, but I had to face it. The next morning, I felt like I was walking on eggshells. Tom acted as if everything was normal, kissing me on the cheek before leaving for work, completely unaware that I knew his dirty secret. My mind raced with questions. How long had this been going on? What did I miss? How could I have been so blind? But instead of confronting him right away, I decided to wait. I needed more than just those texts to bring their lies crashing down. After Tom left, I called the private investigator I'd researched the night before. His name was Mark, and he came highly recommended. He was known for being discreet and thorough, exactly what I needed. "Mark, I need your help," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "I've dealt with cases like this before," he reassured me. "Tell me everything you know." I explained the situation, showing him the screenshots I'd taken. He nodded, his expression serious. "Don't worry, Lily. I'll get you the answers you need." With that, he got to work. It was a relief to have someone on my side, but the waiting was agonizing. Every day felt like an eternity. Over the next week, Mark kept me updated. He followed Tom and Emma, tracking their every move. They weren't even being careful anymore, meeting at cafes, taking long walks together, and eventually booking a room at a nearby hotel. The thought of them laughing, touching, and sharing moments that should have been ours made my stomach turn. Mark provided me with photos, receipts, and timestamps. There was no room for doubt. The betrayal was as real as the pain in my chest. One evening, I decided to see it for myself. Mark informed me that Tom and Emma had planned to meet at a local coffee shop. I told myself it was just to confirm what I already knew, but deep down, I wanted them to see me. When I walked into the cafe, there they were, sitting at a small table near the window, their heads close together, laughing at something on his phone. My heart clenched, but I forced myself to stay calm. I walked right up to their table. "Lilies?" Tom looked up, his smile fading instantly. "Oh, hi." Emma's voice was overly cheerful, but her face was pale. I glanced between them, my expression icy. "What a coincidence," I said, my tone dripping with sarcasm. "Business meeting, I assume?" Tom stammered something about bumping into each other, but I didn't stay to listen. I turned and walked out, but not before snapping a quick photo of them together. I didn't care if they saw. That night, Tom tried to act as if nothing had happened. He even brought home takeout from my favorite restaurant, probably to ease his guilt. "How was your day?" he asked, setting the table. "Uneventful," I replied, keeping my voice steady. Inside, I was seething, but I knew better than to confront him just yet. I needed to bide my time, to wait for the perfect moment to strike. As I lay in bed that night, staring at the ceiling, I promised myself one thing: they would regret underestimating me. My plan was finally coming together. I wasn't going to just confront them. I was going to make sure their betrayal hit them harder than they could have ever expected. Thanks to Mark, the private investigator, I knew where Tom and Emma planned to meet next. They had reserved a room at a nearby hotel. This was my moment to catch them red-handed. That morning, I gathered everything I had: the screenshots, the photos, the receipts, and Mark's detailed reports. Each piece of evidence was a dagger, sharpened and ready to strike. I organized it all into a neat folder. If they tried to deny it, I would have everything ready to prove them wrong. I dressed carefully, subtle but polished. I wanted to walk into that room looking like someone who couldn't be ignored, someone they couldn't manipulate. I didn't just want to confront them. I wanted them to feel the weight of their actions. I arrived at the hotel about 30 minutes before their scheduled meeting. My heart was pounding as I approached the front desk, but I kept my expression neutral. "Hi, I'm here to surprise my husband," I said, smiling sweetly at the receptionist. "Could I have access to room 204? He thinks I'm out of town." The receptionist hesitated, but eventually handed me a key card. I thanked her and walked toward the elevator, clutching the key in my trembling hand. When I reached their floor, I stood outside the door for a moment, gathering myself. I could hear muffled laughter from inside the room. My chest tightened, but I steadied my breath. This was it. I knocked on the door, and after a few moments it opened. Tom stood there, his shirt unbuttoned, his hair slightly messy. His face froze when he saw me. "Lily, what are you doing here?" Without answering, I pushed past him into the room. Emma was sitting on the bed, wrapped in a hotel robe. Her eyes widened in shock when she saw me. "Oh, don't mind me," I said coldly, my voice dripping with sarcasm. "I just thought I'd drop by to see my husband and my best friend. Clearly, I caught you at a bad time." Tom stammered, trying to explain. "Lily, this isn't what it looks like." "Don't," I snapped, holding up a hand. "Don't you dare insult my intelligence." I placed the folder of evidence on the table. "This," I said, opening it to reveal the photos and messages, "is exactly what it looks like. And I've had enough." Emma started crying, tears streaming down her face. "Lily, please, I didn't mean for this to happen. It just happened." I turned to her, my gaze icy. "It just happened? You just happened to start sleeping with my husband? You just happened to lie to my face for months? Grow up, Emma." Tom reached out to me, his face filled with guilt. Lily, I know I messed up, but we can fix this. Please, give me a chance to make things right. I laughed bitterly. Fix this? Tom, you destroyed everything. There's nothing left to fix. I turned on my heel and walked toward the door. Before leaving, I glanced back at them one last time. You two deserve each other. Good luck living with what you've done. I closed the door behind me, leaving them in stunned silence. As I walked away, I felt a strange sense of relief. It was over. I had faced them, and they could no longer control me with their lies. That night, for the first time in weeks, I slept peacefully. The weight of their betrayal no longer crushed me. I was free. My mind was already turning toward the future, one without Tom and Emma, one where I could finally live for myself. After leaving them in that hotel room, I felt a strange mix of relief and anger. I had confronted them, exposed their lies, and walked away with my dignity intact. But the aftermath of their betrayal lingered. My heart ached, and my thoughts raced with questions I might never get answers to. That night, I made a decision. I wouldn't let them ruin me. I was going to take control of my life. When I got back home, Tom was already there. He was sitting on the couch, staring at his phone with a tense expression. As soon as he saw me, he stood up. "Lily, we need to talk," he said, his voice cautious. I didn't even look at him as I walked past. "There's nothing to talk about," I replied coldly. "Please, just give me a chance to explain," he begged, following me. I stopped and turned to face him. "Explain? What is there to explain, Tom? You cheated on me with my best friend. You lied to me every single day. There's no excuse for what you did." He opened his mouth to respond, but I didn't let him. "Save it. I don't want to hear it," I said, slamming the bedroom door behind me. The next morning, I woke up with a clear plan in my mind. I wasn't going to let this drag on. I called a lawyer and set up a meeting to file for divorce. The process was surprisingly straightforward. My lawyer was compassionate but firm, guiding me through every step. When Tom received the divorce papers a few days later, he was devastated. He stood in the doorway, holding the papers in his trembling hands. "Lily, please don't do this," he said, his voice breaking. I met his eyes, but I felt nothing but emptiness. "You made this choice, Tom. Now you have to live with it," I said, walking past him. To my surprise, a week later, I received a call from Emma. Her voice was shaky, and she sounded like she had been crying. "Lily, can we meet?" "I need to apologize," she pleaded. Part of me wanted to hang up, but another part of me wanted to face her one last time. We arranged to meet at the cafe, where we had spent so much time together as friends. When I arrived, Emma was already there, looking pale and disheveled. She fidgeted nervously as I sat down across from her. "Lily, I'm so sorry for everything. I don't know what I was thinking. I never meant to hurt you," she said, her eyes filling with tears. I looked at her, feeling a strange sense of detachment. "You didn't just hurt me, Emma. You betrayed me. You destroyed everything we had. And for what? A fling." She broke down, sobbing into her hands. "I know I don't deserve your forgiveness, but I had to tell you how sorry I am." I sighed, leaning back in my chair. "Emma, I don't hate you, but I can't forgive you either. I don't want you in my life anymore." Her sobs quieted as she nodded. "I understand," she whispered. I stood up, ready to leave. "Goodbye, Emma," I said firmly. "Take care of yourself." After cutting ties with both Tom and Emma, I began focusing on myself. I moved into a new apartment, smaller but cozy, and started rebuilding my life. I took up hobbies I had always wanted to try: painting, yoga, even cooking classes. Each new activity felt like a step toward reclaiming my identity. I also started therapy, which helped me process the pain and find closure. My therapist encouraged me to see this experience not as an end, but as an opportunity for growth. Slowly but surely, I began to feel like myself again. One evening, I gathered everything that reminded me of my life with Tom, photos, gifts, mementos, and placed them in a box. I took it out to the backyard and lit a fire. As the flames consumed the past, I felt an overwhelming sense of liberation. I was finally free, free from lies, free from betrayal, free to start over. I didn't know what the future held, but for the first time in a long time, I felt hopeful. My story wasn't over. It was just beginning. With Tom and Emma out of my life, I finally began to feel the weight lifting off my shoulders. It wasn't easy. Starting over never is, but I was determined to rebuild my life on my own terms. Every day felt like a step forward, a chance to reclaim who I was before betrayal and heartbreak consumed me. I rented a small but cozy apartment on the other side of town. It wasn't much, but it was mine. For the first time in years, I could decorate my space however I wanted, without anyone else's opinions or preferences. I spent my weekends painting the walls, picking out furniture, and making it feel like home. It was a therapeutic process, each stroke of paint symbolizing a fresh start. I began creating a routine that focused entirely on me. Morning started with yoga on the small balcony of my apartment, followed by a cup of coffee as I read a book. I began taking long walks after work, exploring new parks and parts of the city I had never paid attention to before. I also threw myself into my career, working harder than ever. It felt good to focus on something productive, something I could control. My boss noticed my dedication, and within a few months, I was promoted. The recognition gave me a boost of confidence I hadn't felt in a long time. One evening, while walking through a local park, I stopped by a small cafe to grab a cup of tea. The barista greeted me with a warm smile and said, "You look like someone who could use a good Earl Grey." I laughed softly. "Is it that obvious?" He introduced himself as Nathan. His easy demeanor and genuine kindness immediately put me at ease. Over the next few weeks, I found myself returning to that cafe more often than I intended. Nathan and I began to chat, and I learned he was an aspiring photographer who worked at the cafe to make ends meet. Nathan started inviting me to his photography exhibitions, and I hesitated at first, unsure if I was ready to let someone new into my life. But his persistence and sincerity broke through my walls. One evening, after an exhibition, we walked through the city together, talking about everything and nothing. "You know, Lily," he said, stopping under the soft glow of a street lamp, "you have this incredible strength about you. I don't know what you've been through, but it's clear you've come out of it even stronger." His words struck a chord. For the first time in a long time, I felt seen, not as someone who had been betrayed, but as someone who had overcome it. As my connection with Nathan grew, I felt the need to let go of the lingering ties to my past. One evening, I gathered everything that reminded me of Tom, old photos, gifts, even the wedding album, and packed it into a box. I drove to a quiet spot by the river and threw the box into the water, watching it disappear beneath the surface. It was symbolic, a final goodbye to everything that had weighed me down. I was ready to embrace the future, whatever it held. With Nathan's encouragement, I also began pursuing passions I had long ignored. I signed up for painting classes, started volunteering at a local shelter, and even planned a solo trip to Europe. For the first time in years, I felt like I was truly living, not just surviving. Nathan became a part of my journey, but he didn't define it. I had learned the hard way that my happiness had to come from within, and I was determined to never lose myself again. As I stood on the balcony of my apartment one evening, watching the sun set over the city, I felt a deep sense of peace. My past no longer controlled me. I was free free to love, free to trust, free to live. And this time, I was going to live for myself. Just as I thought I had left the past behind, life decided to throw me a curveball. One afternoon, as I was returning home from work, my phone buzzed with a message. It was from Tom. The sight of his name on my screen made my stomach twist. I hesitated before opening it, but curiosity got the better of me. "Lily, I need to talk to you. It's important." I stared at the message, my thoughts racing. What could he possibly have to say after everything? I debated ignoring it, but a part of me needed to know. I typed back a quick reply. "What do you want?" His response was almost immediate. "Please, can we meet? Just once. I need to tell you something." Against my better judgment, I agreed. We arranged to meet at the same cafe, where we'd had so many moments together before everything fell apart. It felt strange returning there, but I knew this conversation might give me the closure I needed. Tom was already seated when I arrived, fidgeting nervously with his coffee cup. He looked different, older, worn out. The confidence he once carried was replaced with a somber expression. As I sat down across from him, he gave me a small, hesitant smile. "Thanks for coming," he said softly. "I don't know why I'm here," I replied, crossing my arms. "What do you want, Tom?" He took a deep breath, his hands shaking slightly as he set down the cup. "Lily, I've been doing a lot of thinking about everything. About us. And I realize now how much I ruined." I stayed silent, waiting for him to get to the point. Tom leaned forward, his voice trembling. "After you left, I hit rock bottom. Emma, she left me, too. Turns out, she was seeing someone else the whole time we were together." A bitter laugh escaped me. "Karma's funny like that, isn't it?" He winced but continued. "I deserved it. I know that. But it made me realize just how badly I treated you. I don't expect forgiveness, Lily, but I needed to tell you you didn't deserve any of it. You were the best thing in my life, and I ruined it." For a moment, I didn't know how to respond. His words were genuine, but they didn't erase the pain he caused. "Tom," I said finally, my voice steady, "I appreciate you saying that. But it doesn't change anything. What you and Emma did, it broke me. And I had to rebuild myself from the ground up. I've moved on." He nodded slowly, his shoulders sagging. "I understand. I needed you to know." There was a long silence between us. Finally, I stood up.
"Goodbye, Tom.
"I hope you find peace. But I'm done carrying this." As I walked out of the cafe, I felt a sense of closure I hadn't expected. The chapter with Tom was truly over. That evening, I met Nathan for dinner. His warm smile and easy demeanor were a stark contrast to the heavy conversation I'd had earlier. Sitting across from him, I felt lighter, freer. "How was your day?" Nathan asked, pouring me a glass of wine. I smiled, leaning back in my chair. "Liberating," I said simply. For the first time in years, I felt like I was exactly where I was meant to be.
Please subscribe to our channel Stellar Stories. We have new amazing stories coming out every day. Thank you.